Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. This is the CRKT Crawford Kasper. This is designed by those two guys, Pat Crawford and Bob Kasper, as a combat knife. I have here the desert tan version. It also comes in a black handle with either gray coated or satin blade, and this can be had with serrations. As you know, I'm not a fan of any serrations except for maybe VEF serrations. And so I of course went with the plain edge, which is very, very good. By the way, this is kind of irrelevant because everyone who owns a knife ought to be able to sharpen it, but this knife does come razor sharp out of the box. This is one of the sharpest knives I've ever gotten from CRKT, and I have a fair number of CRKT blades. All right, so very, very big, beefy value folder. This thing is large, and it's large in a lot of the ways you really like. Big blade on it, gotta love that. Big, very comfortable handle, gotta love that. And it all comes for a very small price tag of like 19 bucks. Now, let's go into size and weight. And I'll keep the camera zoomed in while I talk about the blade as well, just because then I can point stuff out easier. So, size and weight on this, it is 9 1/4 inches overall, 3 3/4 inch blade, 5 1/2 inch handle. The width dimension here is 5/16 of an inch, and closed this way. This is a measurement you may want to keep in mind if you want to carry this. This is 1 5/8 inches, so it's quite large, okay? A couple of knives that are pretty commonly owned by people. Here's a Spyderco Tenacious compared to the Crawford Kasper. So you can see if this is your ideal carry size, then this knife is much, much bigger. One more knife that's even smaller but very common, the Cryo 2. There those two are together. Again, you can see this is a big, very beefy folding knife. Consider this dimension as well. Now, oh, by the way, this is a bit of an aside, bear with me if you wouldn't mind. I had to send this Cryo back to Kershaw to replace the torsion bar. Their warranty program is really good. It's really user-friendly. It's easy to follow. It's easy to get your knife there in and communicate with them what's going on. And they do send it back to you fixed and for no further cost. I know there are some knife companies who want you to send money to cover return shipping. Kershaw doesn't ask for that, and I think that's a win on their part. Let's get back to the Crawford Kasper. I guess I should have left it zoomed in a little bit so I could describe the blade to you. There we go. I think you can see well enough that this is a clip point with a hollow grind. Of course, it is got the tan coating on it, and that coating's held up well. I already mentioned this was very sharp out of box, and I have not sharpened it yet, and it will still shave hair, and I've been using it quite a bit. I generally do that at first, just to get a sense for how well a blade's going to hold its edge. So I've touched it up a little bit, but that's it. It's actually performed really well as any budget steel. The steel on this is HCR 14 MOV, and I think I said before, I like to see those budget steels hold an edge for like 4 or 5 days around there, and this one has done more than that, so very good. It is a hollow grind, and the clip point combined with the hollow grind does make this a very acute point. The belly as well makes it a good slasher, and so you can see from the blade shape why you would call this a combat knife. The handle shape is the same. You know, it's designed to really be retained well in hand and to work both in forward and reverse grip. Okay, so those features do lend themselves to a combat knife, but I'm going to suggest to you that the hollow grind also makes it a great slicer. There's a little bit of flat here, which means if you've got if you're doing food prep or if you're whittling on something, it's going to perform well. You've got that sharp tip for finer tasks, and the grip does allow you to choke up nicely on that and get some fine detailed work done, which I really appreciate. This is a very versatile blade shape. And the hollow grind does one further thing that relates to the strength of a blade. And this is one of the things, I know we all talk about full flat grinds, and Nut and Fancy really loves full flat grinds, but a hollow grind has this benefit. Because you're making this convex shape, you are able to get a lot of material here and carry that material fairly far out the blade. That means you get some extra strength without sacrificing edge geometry. So the edge geometry on this is still fantastic, and you're getting a whole lot of steel carried out very near to the point. So that's a really nice feature, and hollow grind knives have that. Now, would I prefer this as a higher hollow grind? Yes, high hollow grind is preferable for sure. All right, so that's the blade shape, and that's sort of some of the discussion pertaining to that blade shape. Let's move on to deployment, lockup, and the handle. Deploys via thumb stud. It's ambidextrous. If you want me to prove it, there you go. Left-handed, works just fine. It is a liner lock, and that lock is very sturdy. There's no blade play of any kind. It is really, really solid. And I would say that you've got this locks feature as well that doesn't, now I need to point out this because I've heard a couple people say it. One, it does not turn into a virtual fixed blade. Two, it doesn't strengthen the lockup. It can't. The only way you can improve lockup is by improving the interface between the lock face and the blade tang. The locks mechanism has nothing to do with that interface at all. Okay? All it does is it puts a little piece of steel behind the liner lock so that it can't be disengaged. That's how it works. And it's a good system. You know, there's no question. It's a valuable addition to a knife, especially. I'm going to suspect that there are certain places that CRKT is trying to market its knife, maybe certain military and law enforcement that ask for this, okay? And that's why you're going to see it on certain blades. That's just my guess. I could be totally out to lunch. Anyway, the lockup is very good, very positive, and in fact better than a lot of knives that I have that cost considerably more. Bushings in here are Teflon and bronze on the two sides. It works really well. That Teflon bushing, because of that, there's a little bit of flex. It's not blade play. I'm not actually moving the blade. There's no ticking or anything like that. It's because as I put pressure on this, I can, if I push really hard, compress that Teflon just a little bit, okay? So that's going to be true of practically any knife with Teflon washers. It's certainly true of the ones that I own, and it's not a big deal. Full stainless steel liners, certainly that adds to the weight. And they're not milled out at all of any kind. Now, if you're one of those guys that loves that for the added strength, you're going to love this. It also has full back spacer here, or almost a full back spacer. It's only partially open. And all of this is Zytel, the handle, the back spacer, all of that. It is smooth Zytel. There's jimping here on the back of the handle a bit, and some jimping on the liner lock. The jimping is fine. However, this knife achieves retention in hand through the shape of the blade. And I actually prefer that because if you achieve grip with all texturing, what can happen is that texturing could be defeated by mud or, gunk or, animal guts if you're using it for hunting. When you depend on the shape of the handle itself, then no matter what you do, this knife is going to retain well in hand. You could dunk this thing in oil and hand it to me, and I would still be able to keep a good grip on the knife, okay? So I prefer when a knife, jimping is fine, and textured G10 is great, but I like to see a knife that thinks about where are somebody's fingers going to go and how am I going to keep them there with the shape of the handle. And this is definitely a knife that does that. There is enough of the pommel sticking through that if you wanted to use this as an impact device, either, for, the other day I did this exact motion because I have a stainless steel water bottle and the bottom popped out. Give it a smack with the bottom of my knife, it's popped back in and now it doesn't want to wobble on the table. So there's lots of reasons to have an impact device, including, of course, the use of non-lethal force. Does have a lanyard hole that's not very big. I don't know what you'd try to fit through there. Certainly not 550 cord, which is really the only thing I'd want to fit through there. It is Torx bit construction, and I'm just going to issue this warning. In any low-cost knife, I've had this with Kershaw's, I've had it with Spyderco's, I've had it with Birds, I've had it with CRKTs. Low-cost knives tend to have hardware that is crappy, and you may strip out a screw, which is really annoying. I have had to ask companies to send more. And if you remember, a few years ago, all the Spyderco Tenacious videos, people were complaining about that, okay? Anyway, likely because of the price point, this has fairly soft steel in the screws, which means you could strip it if you're not careful. Overall, I find this to be a very, very good knife for the price. At 20 bucks, you're getting a big, very well built, very strong, very comfortable, capable folding knife. Is it comparable to a $80 knife or a $150 knife? Well, no. There's a lot of things that you don't see, you know, in terms of materials, in terms of fit and finish, but it's comparable to lots of knives that come in at a considerably higher price point, $40, $50, $60 knives. This is every bit as good as a lot of those and gets a lot of stuff really right. So if you're a person who likes to carry a large folding knife, if you're a person who maybe needs, normally you don't carry one, but you'd like to have one for certain situations, and since it's not your main carry knife, you don't want to spend a lot of money, perfect option. If you need, you know, if you're a soldier, a police officer, you need a self-defense tool and you want something dependable, you can't go far wrong. And especially if you're thinking about going into like a tactical folder or a gun for knife for firearm backup, this is a great way to test the waters, get used to carrying a knife, and then upgrade once you kind of know what you like and don't like. Okay, so lots of good uses for this. I will say if you like it, this is discontinued, so I don't know how long they're going to be available. I don't know how long they've been discontinued. They haven't been on CRKT's website for a long time. I don't know when the last production run would have been, but I know there's an end point in terms of how long you're going to be able to get this blade, okay? So keep that in mind. I got to say one last time, very, very good knife for the money. I'm quite impressed with this, and I've done a lot with it, and you know, for 20 bucks, really, really hard to beat. Okay, there you go. Talk to you later, YouTube. Have a great day.